I pay rent on a rundown place. There ain't no view, but there's lots of space in my heart. The heart that you own. Pay the rent, paid right on time. Baby, I pay you every single dime for my heart. The heart that you own. Used to be I could love you for free way back before you bought the property. I pay daily on what once was mine. Lord, I probably owe you for these tears that I cried. Hey, yes, I pay rent on a rundown place. There ain't no view, but there's lots of space in my heart. The heart that you own. I struggle each night to find a new way to pay what I owe, just so I can stay. It ain't overdue, so you can't throw me out. I've loved you for years, don't know where I'd go now. Hey, yes, I pay rent on a rundown place. There ain't no view, but there's lots of space in my heart. The heart that you own.
Baby, we'll be right back with Dwight Yoakam and Jerry Peters.
The song that Jimmy Rogers, the guy I was talking about, wrote, called Hobo Bill, back in like 32. This guy, he was from Meridian, Mississippi. He ended up out in Texas as a brakeman, and there were a lot of Chinese railroad workers and black railroad workers that he worked with and worked around, and so he started writing songs, listening to them sing, and ended up in New York City like in 1928. He was the first country music star ever really on record. And it was cut out in New York, not in Nashville. He went to New York City and cut. He died of TB in a studio, in a session. Died, yeah, in a studio. And wrote T for Texas. I'm trying to remember the other stuff he wrote. Real fast. Mule Skinner Blues. Good morning, Captain. Good morning, Shine. Do you need a Mule Skinner?
He predates the Carter family?
Yeah, no, about the same time. The Carters were in the 20s.
Right.
And they were on the Opry. And he went to New York. He was up in New York cutting. He was a bigger star than them, though, actually, at the time.
Right.
But he died in like 32 or something, right? You know, at the beginning, at the height of the Depression. And so it's almost kind of like pre-war, post-war.
Right.
You know, baseball players and stuff. It's like he's like from a former time, so a lot of people aren't conscious of him. But Mule Skinner Blues was his. It's a great song. He yodeled a lot. He was like, you know, the blue yodeler.
Right.
Anyway, but it was all blues-based stuff. It was nothing more than blues.
See, anyway. It's amazing because you never, when you listen to people talk about country music, it takes on this. It's as if it were a separate entity. Because if you listen to Hank Williams, I mean, it is blues. That's all it is. It's Bessie Smith. It's Hank Williams.
Well, he was raised in Montgomery, Alabama. I mean, he grew up literally on the street, and I believe it was a black shoe shine man, because he was a shoe shine boy, Hank, for a time, that taught him to play the guitar initially, and then, you know, he took from there. But he did a thing. He used to do a bit. I cut a song on the new album that's kind of emulative of his alter ego. He cut records under the name Luke the Drifter, because the record label at the time, this is in the 40s, thought that the stuff was too politically motivated and too provocative, topically, to put on radio. And in 1947, they said, no, you can't put that out because it'll ruin your career. Your secular career will be. So he cut under this name, Luke the Drifter. Did you ever see Andy Griffith in the movie Facing the Crowd?
Well, yeah.
Yeah. Lunatic. This movie is like whacked. Andy Griffith?
It's the best.
You'll never believe it's Andy Griffith. Walter Matthau and Patricia Neal.
Right.
And the first film that Lee Remick ever did, the little
That's
baton
right, as
twirler
the
he married in
baton twirler, that's
Arkansas.
right.
What a maniac. I mean, what a myopic megalomaniac. It's about TV, and it's cut in 1957. And it like predates network or broadcast news, and it's brilliant.
Well, you know, this is something, you know, they're getting ready to do a remake of it.
Oh, they are?
Over at Warner Brothers.
No, I didn't know that.
You ought to
Because they
let
own
you,
it.
yes, they do.
Well, I wrote a song about it. It's called, because his name and his character in this thing is called Lonesome Roads. So I wrote a song called Lonesome Roads, and goes, it's like an old Hank Luke the Drifter thing. Is where did I go wrong? You know, I've never had a clue. I must have just been born no good. That's the best that I could do. Was it just my fate in life to end up here this way? Lost and all alone, or a black lamb that's gone astray. Lonesome roads are the only kind I ever traveled. Empty rooms are the only place I ever stayed. I'm just a face out in the crowd that looks like trouble. Poor old worthless me's the only friend I ever made. Anyway, you know the movie, so it's like the tie-in is all
I'm
that.
telling you, you ought to tell your folks to get on it. Because
I didn't know they were remaking it.
Yes, well, it was originally going to be done a long time ago with a different cast, and I won't tell you who was supposed to be in it, but there's a reason I know as much about it as I do.
Yeah.
So you ought to check it out. Now, let me ask you, when you were growing up...
Is it going to be a contemporary piece? They're going to do it like now, obviously.
Yeah, they'd have to, because, you know, my attitude is that would be, as it was contemporary for then, it must be contemporary
now. Yeah, exactly.
for now.
That's what makes it so potent.
How come you know so much? I mean, I'm curious, because most of the folks that I know...
It's really all bull. I'm just making it up as I go.
No, baby, that's my line. But where did this love for this music come out of?
I don't know. I mean, you know, as analytically cerebral as I usually am, and I don't know. I guess maybe my grandparents. I only had one set of grandparents that I actually knew, and they had a profound impact on my life. My grandfather's name was Luther Tibbs in Early, and he was a coal miner for like 40 years. And these were people, mountain people, very, very simplistic and yet very, very wise. You know, I don't know that I'll ever completely come to grips with the importance, the impact that he had on my life, and I think that it's almost an unconscious debt that I feel I owe, and I moved out here 15 years ago, and I had a lot of time alone to think. You know, people said, you know, a weird place to, for a country singer to be based in LA. I said, no. I said, actually, the juxtaposition of it, I think, gives me a perspective that I wouldn't have if I'd never left.
Right.
You know, it's and there's a lot of kinetic energy in a town like LA that I don't get someplace else, and you know, it's the irritation necessary to stimulate the muscle to create the pearl. Hopefully.
Right.
You know?
When do you get back to the town you grew up in very often?
I played a couple of dates in, well, where I was born. I was born in Pikeville, Kentucky, and then we moved up to Columbus, Ohio. So I go to both. I play down in southeast Kentucky, and I play up in Ohio.
Ah.
But,
well, hold on, baby, because we'll be right back with Dwight Yoakam.
Oh, we've been going?
Yeah, baby.
Liar. She wore red dresses with her black shining hair. Oh, she had my baby and caused me to care. Then coldly she left me to suffer and cry. Oh, she wore red dresses and told such sweet lies. Norteña or ranchero music, as Manuel, my friend, called it.
For a second there, I thought he was telling my story, you know.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
well, she ends up dead.
And
this one, she ends up dead. So.
Not this weekend, please. Now, let me ask you, I've asked this question to a couple of other folks who play country. Why do you think there are not a whole lot of black country artists that we know of? I mean, we know about Charlie Pride.
What did Jerry say earlier? Subcultural segregation. Yeah, it's the same reason that there aren't a lot of hillbilly artists currently who make the jump. Ironically, because it's where rock came from, to rock and roll radio. Right. I mean, I've done cuts that were rock palatable, that were just rock and roll cuts.
Right.
That were MTV refused to play because and MTV had played us up. I'd been on the format to the point that I had success on country radio. Once I had a hit on country radio, I was ostracized from MTV. So
really?
It cuts both ways, and it I think literally boils down to the fact that we're still a society that's grappling with a segregationist kind of past, and we're. Radio in the United States is still there's a necessity to an extent to be formatted. There's 10,000 radio stations in this country, so they have to, because they're commercial based. It's commercially based radio. They have to appeal to a listener, and they have to get Arbitron ratings and all that stuff. And so there's a need to service a certain audience and let an audience know what they're hearing when they come there. But I just think that it's still, in answer to that question, in not a very succinct fashion, but as best I can, I think it's just that there's a kind of a subcultural segregation that goes on even in the arts.
Yeah.
Otis Redding was doing stuff that was, if it had been a white guy doing it and cutting it in Nashville instead of in Memphis or in Muscle Shoals, it would have been country music.
Right.
So I think it's just, the labels we apply to music that limits us.
It does, because they're talking about this resurgence of country music and the crossover to rock and roll and that. But there is that caramel, that melted caramel that you have, that George Jones has, that all those cats that you think of when you think of country, kind of make you want to go home and get in bed.
All the way back to Jimmy Rogers.
Yes.
People who were totally influenced by.
Are those the guys you grew up listening to?
Well, I started educating myself because by the time I was, I grew up for the greatest part in the 60s. Radio had exploded at that point. Musical radio exploded in the 60s. I was able to hear and receive an education almost by osmosis, by just pushing the car radio button, throughout the 60s and hear the Motown stuff come down from Detroit. Simultaneously hear the Stax stuff out of Memphis, and the British stuff, which was an English interpretation of American R&B, and the Stones and the Beatles were reinterpreting, especially the Stones. When you listen to stuff like "Get Off My Cloud" or "Satisfaction," they're literally emulating in their own way, what was early 60s soul music, the Supreme stuff and the grooves that they were doing, so I was hearing that simultaneous to hearing the colloquial stuff that I grew up with, from being out of, southeast Kentucky, Pikeville and Floyd County and that area of Kentucky, the mountain music. So anyway.
Yeah. Now it's reported that you always talk about being, rumor has it that you spend a lot of time in your head and that you read a great deal. What are you reading?
That rumor would only circulate among former girlfriends and current. Yeah. What am I reading?
Yeah, what are you reading now?
I'm trying to finish a Kinky Friedman novel.
Yes.
You hip to Kinky's
yes,
writing?
yes, yes.
Her character. The last thing I read, he did a thing called Musical Chairs, which was his latest novel. And I'm trying to get through started on a book called Killing Mr. Watson. Pete Dexter is another writer that I'm kind of a fan of right now. These are just all novels.
Right.
Pete Dexter wrote Paris Trout.
Yeah. Oh,
Did
he's
you see
wonderful. Yes, the book
Hopper
is great.
Yeah, the book is.
The book is fantastic.
Yeah.
The TV movie.
Deadwood.
You know.
Deadwood is another thing he wrote. A western about the last year of life of Wild Bill Hickok and his sidekick. And it's a very historically accurate book.
Right.
We're talking about the historical accuracy of that stuff. Especially with westerns, I think it's very gripping to read something that's so historically accurate that's based in that time period in our country, because it's like there's no glamour to this.
No.
It's all kind of a cesspool of life that occurred at that point. So I'm Pete Dexter, and I'm reading a lot of kind of esoteric stuff. Things that are...
You ought to get this book called Ishmael. I'm trying to turn... Yeah, by Daniel Quinn. We're talking about esoteric books.
Yeah.
This is one that that'll take some time.
The Watchers is another thing I finished.
Watchers is great, yeah.
Read that while I was doing the last album. I was at home at night. I'd get home from, I'd be keyed up and not go to bed for a couple, 3 hours and sit there and read the Watchers.
Now, see, a lot of people feel like they can't do that. You talk to actors sometimes, they say, oh, I go home and I'm just so up, but I can't do anything, because I read in the bathroom. I'm a big advocit of stacking books. It's the truth. I told this to Kirstie
It's the most
Alley.
focused moment.
That's right.
Of your day.
This is what I said. This is what I said. Dwight, you've been with the wrong women, honey. You need to be with me.
It's the most. And when you see me wander off with that kind of distant look in my eyes,
that's okay.
Just check the bathroom in a minute or two. You know where I'm headed.
It is the truth.
I feel a thought coming on.
And it's the place you have to relax.
They call it anal retentiveness, don't they?
Yes. And on that
you can edit that, right?
We'll be right back with Dwight Yoakam. Yay! Well, Dwight, I think we have done more for literature and bathrooms in this country than anyone knows, and I'm thrilled you came.
It's been wonderful to spend this bathroom moment with you and Jerry.
Jerry, you the greatest. You guys want to take us out?
Sure, let's do.
We'll see you tomorrow.
Just standing alone in this room, surrounded by memories we stopped making too soon. Oh, I was just standing, I was just standing alone in this room, alone in this room. I was just thinking all to myself how I still want you, oh, nobody else. Yeah, I was just thinking, I was just thinking all to myself, all to myself. In this darkness I move slowly, yeah, always struggling to be free, but I still hear your voice, and everywhere I choice that's made such a fool of me. Yeah, oh, I was just wondering if there was a way to bring you back to me. Oh, maybe things I could say. Oh, I was just wondering, I was just wondering if there was a way. Night.
Thanks for playing with me, Dave.